Pat, and I have a website called Cuddle Soft Kits. I also work for Shannon Fabric as a consultant and a designer and a teacher. I love to work with Cuddle, and I have lots of great products on my website that I have created and that I sell as kits. Scarves right now are a big fun item. This one that I have on is an infinity scarf made out of Shannon Fabric's soft Cuddle that has been sculptured in lots of different designs. When we were at Quilt Market, some of our sales reps came in to our booth with a scarf that they had found in a shop at the airport. And I tried really hard to figure out a way to write down how to make this pattern. And then actually, I had a little trouble figuring out how I was going to do it. So I laid it out on the table and I looked at, obviously it's going to have one twist because that's what an infinity scarf is. So I knew what I wanted it to look like. I just wasn't sure how I was going to get it to that point. So I had a hard time visualizing how I was going to make this scarf to look like this scarf. I knew that it had to have one twist, and so it had to be pretty simple. It was just a loop with a twist. How hard can that be? But I could not figure out how to make it. Every time I tried to sew and twist, I just came up with a knot. So I finally laid my fabric out. I knew I wanted it to be 36 inches long. So I had a yard of fabric. I cut it into 3 9 3/4 inch strips. Most Cuddle fabrics, and especially these sculptured soft Cuddles, are 60 wide mostly. So that's why I cut them 9 3/4, because sometimes you have to trim off the selvedge. And then also sewing along the straight of grain is a lot easier than sewing cross-cut. So here's my 36 by 9 3/4. So I knew it had to have one twist. So I twisted it just like that. So this is what I wanted my finished scarf to look like. So I just envisioned where the seams would be. So right here is my first seam. I'm going to call this the top edge. So this top edge, I pinned this 2 center pieces that are right sides together. So we got those pinned good, just as if they were sewn. And then this top and bottom piece are going to be sewn together. So I folded them in just like the seam allowance. So then I got these 2 pinned just as the way we want them to be. So then I knew with those 2 seams taken, this is the outside edge. So this top outside edge I knew needed to be stitched right here. So I put a pin right here because this seam right here is really important. If you pin this, you want to pin it a couple of times right here so that this doesn't loose. You don't want to lose this seam because then it gets all twisted and you can't remember where you were. So then I'm going to reach in between these 2 wrong sides, which is on the back piece, and I'm going to reach through and get this. And I'm going to pull it out. So here is this seam. I'm going to pin it again so that I'm sure I don't lose it. Well, this isn't actually accurate, but it's at least holding where this seam is supposed to be. Now, if I very carefully turn this up here, here's my 2 seams that I pinned. So you just follow this seam. So you can see that we're going to sew these 2 seams, and you're going to come back and sew this seam. So to start with, we're going to go to the sewing machine. We're going to sew these 2 seams, and be careful not to lose these pins. So we're going to run to the sewing machine, and we sewed these 2 seams. So I'm going to go back just like I did before, and I'm going to reach in between, and I'm going to pull through here. And so here are my 2 seams that are sewn. See right here, so I had those pinned together. I'm moving my pins to the inside, so then when I go down here, here is my seams that I've sewn. So we're going to start right here And if I pin this, then I won't lose that other seam. So this is that top edge seam with both pieces. Then this is that top outside seam. So I'm going to pin it as I go around. Cuddle is so wonderful, but it is so slick that it always pays to pin. Because this is cut on a straight grain, it isn't as slick as it normally if you were sewing it across the grain. But works great. I like to use a walking foot, and I also like to use the Smith size 90 needles. They are just big enough that they hold it really secure, but they're not so big that they create a big hole. Okay, so I'm coming around and I'm going to pin this clear until I get to this. There's my seam. So I want this seam, so you kind of make sure you've got your seam so that it's not, so you don't have too much. So there it is, it worked. So I'm going to come back. So this, I pinned this seam. So this is actually halfway around. So I'm going to back up to where my first pins were. And you can see this is folding over itself as you go to sew around. So I like to start right here, and I like to sew in, and I'll show you on, here's my seam. I like to start on the outside and stitch in about 5 stitches and then pivot and start sewing around. And when you do that, it secures this seam so that when you go to turn it inside out, it folds the seam allowance inside and it makes a really clean edge to stitch shut. So I'm going to sew in, and then I'm going to start sewing. Actually, I'm going to do it this way. So I start in, and then I sew this first seam. So I've got that together, and then I start sewing around. This seam actually is an entire seam. When I first made it, I thought I was going to come just to the seam that I had pinned to, and then I would turn around and go back up to the other seam. But because it's twisted, it's one seam. So you can see as you go through, it's turned inside of itself. So you just keep sewing and pulling all the way around until you get to the other shoulder, the other seam. There we go. So you can see right here, and then you sew up and then come out and you secure it a little bit. So there's your opening, and it doesn't have to be really big. And then I just reach in and pull it out. And voila, there's a scarf. They're fun to put 2 colors together or just 1 color. This one is based on 9 3/4 and 36 inches, but for the children, I like to do them 30 by 8. So you can cut it across the grain or across the width of fabric. It's a little trickier to sew together because that time it does stretch, but it makes them just a little shorter. So for the children's version, they're up closer on their neck. I actually have a 30-inch one that I like, and it fits up tighter around your neck, so it's great to tuck inside of a scarf. These are a great gift idea. They're great. They just make everybody happy because they're so soft. So hopefully you can figure out how to do these and make somebody happy. Make them a cuddle scarf.